Happiness. Happiness is happiness is something we're all looking for. It's the most, it's actually, I was thinking, it's actually what we speak about most in Krishna consciousness. We're always speaking about happiness. Everybody's trying to find ways to be happy, trying to find a way to be full of joy. And this is the constitutional nature of every living entity. Every soul that exists in the creation is part and parcel of God. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Mamaivam sho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. Every living entity is eternally my fragmental part and parcel. And so just as God is full of pleasure, in fact, he's the source of pleasure, therefore every living entity is also desiring pleasure, wanting pleasure, and seeking pleasure. So the endless pleasure hunt goes on, but the pleasure of the living entity in the material world is hindered by his misidentification, his or her misidentification with the material body, thinking that this body is matter, thinking that I am this body. And in that way, the living entity is seeking pleasure through food. The living entity is seeking pleasure through power. Living entity is seeking pleasure through sexuality. And so all these pleasures, they constitute the lower nature of the living entity. They don't actually bring one to true happiness. So Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Yehi samsparsha jaboga dukkha yonaya evate adiyattamanta konteya natesha ramate buddha. That living entities in this material world that are wise, they don't delight in this sensory pleasure, because sensory pleasure has a beginning and it has an end. So this is a big illusion we have, because we are eternal living entities, and an eternal living entity will not be able to feel happy seeking a pleasure that is temporal. Temporal pleasure will not give the eternal living entity any type of happiness. You are existing from time immemorial. Therefore, how could you find happiness in that which is only fleeting? Therefore, the living entity should seek pleasure in that which is spiritual. And so sometimes the living entities are seeking pleasure in food, power, sex, safety, and sometimes just seeking a better setting. It's described in the Vedas that there are 3 modalities of acting. One of them is called sattva, meaning the mode of goodness. People in the mode of goodness, living entities that exist in the mode of goodness, are feeling very happy. They're feeling very full of knowledge. They're feeling very peaceful. And in that way, they're more interested in studying and spirituality. And then living entities in the mode of passion, rajas, they are driven by money, by power, by pleasure, working very hard. Our whole society is mostly in rajas. And then there's tamas, which is ignorance, meaning getting pleasure from that which is intoxicating, sleep, wrath, these types of things. And so sometimes the living entity is seeking pleasure just in a better setting, moving from a passionate environment to a good environment. But even this good environment, living very peacefully, living with a very nice atmosphere, even that is not going to sufficiently satisfy the soul. We'll always find that there's some disruption. The soul is satisfied only by that which is eternal. So if someone actually realizes that their next phase of pleasure seeking is that I'm going to seek pleasure in knowledge, that if I have knowledge, then I can be happy, spiritual knowledge. Because sometimes we find that it's not our karma to have, good circumstances. Sometimes our karma is we live in passionate circumstances. Sometimes we live in ignorant circumstances. Every living entity is brought to a certain circumstance by his karma. And we think, oh yes, free will and all these things. But actually, we don't choose where we're born. We don't choose our circumstances. There's so many different things that, constitute our lives. And so, therefore, we're always trying to counteract all the different miseries of the material world. And then the living entity could find some contentment. And that's a dangerous situation for spiritual life. If we want to just be materially happy, contentment is good. Everybody's looking for contentment. No, I want contentment. Content means I have enough. I have, sufficient money, everything I need. But then there is, beyond contentment, there is, how can I actually grow if I'm always content? It's very difficult to grow spiritually. So therefore, God, sometimes he puts the living entity in positions where it may be difficult, it may be challenging to do some service, but he has to grow. that discontentment allows him to grow, to make advancement. So the real thing the living entity is looking for is love. Love is the greatest power in the universe. And love is the only power that actually can control God. We just came out of our Damodar month, which is a month that is characterized by how the love of God's devotees actually controls God himself. And so the ontology of love is what I wanted to speak about tonight. Love requires three things. Some people think love is just a feeling. Oh, I'm just happy I'm in love. Love requires three things. Love requires a lover, a beloved, and an exchange, right? Because if love is just a feeling, then you ask any couple that's been together for a long time, it's not always just a feeling, because the feeling of so-called love goes, and then they may get in an argument. They may have to deal with difficult circumstances, hard circumstances. So love is more of an action. It's an act of sacrifice, that I'm caring for someone else's happiness. And that brings the living entity great joy. It's like a little baby. When a mother has a little baby, she loves this baby so unconditionally, but she's also willing to suffer so many things. She's getting up at night, and she's, struggling. She's working. She's, struggling very hard to take care of this baby. But this is actual love. And it said that in the material world, the highest form of love is the love a mother has for her child. So in religion or in spirituality, and this applies to all spiritual practices and paths, the goal is not to be content. The goal is not to live a life that we were speaking of goodness, to just come to this content, peaceful place. The goal of religion is transformation. The goal of spiritual life is to transform. And so when people come to our temple, we hope that they're going to have a transformation. Because if someone is just religious but doesn't transform, there's no happiness. There's no change. There's no actual spiritual knowledge awakening. And we see that in the world today. We see that religion in its lower stage, spirituality in its lower stage, is a very horrible thing. It causes so much war. It causes so much fighting. It causes so much separation. And this is the lower stage of it, where it is giving one a way of living, and also a way of feeling sometimes better than others. It's giving one a way to cope with the onslaught of material existence, the ups and downs. That's one purpose of religion. It's a good starting point. But there's a better ending point, is that should take us to a stage of spiritual transformation, wherein the structure of the ego, the structure that makes us feel, anything but love for other living entities, breaks down. And in that phase, we become enlivened and happy. So most people aren't bold enough to ask, am I really ready to go deeper? One of our great teachers in our movement, His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami, he said that going deeper into spiritual life is not a extracurricular activity. And so sometimes we see in the world today, hey, I go to church on Sunday, I do this and that regularly, I'm good, I'm saved. And in this way, we find a perfect way to cease our spiritual advancement. So it's not extracurricular. If you want to advance as a soul and advance in the spirit, you have to go deeper, and you have to go deeper, and you have to go deeper. And so genuine spiritual life is very rare in that sense, because genuine spiritual life requires one to go deeper and to seek harder and to go into themselves and to let go of that which is no longer serving that highest goal. So sometimes people think spiritual life means a utopia, when in actuality, it's many times the opposite. Those who are dedicated to material happiness, if they're intelligent enough, they can perhaps create a utopia. They can create a place that is free of so many material sufferings. But in reality, those who have made spiritual advancement in the past, and those who are famous for such great spiritual feats, their life was hardly a utopia. They faced so many struggles, so many challenges, so many ups and downs. And so we have to be bold if we want that higher happiness. It requires some tests. It requires some challenges. And so we find that in the world today, the United States is a very nice country. And so many people, I travel, I go to India and then to other countries, and people are always aspiring to come to the USA because they perceive it as some type of utopia. But what I find here is people are sometimes more unhappy than those places which are full of poverty and full of challenge and strife. And so everybody's seeking a different material position in that way. But that is not the goal. The goal of spiritual life is something higher. So we all have a karma. We all heard of karma, right? Karma means action, reaction. So you have some karma. And your karma is you're born in a certain place. You're raised in a certain place. You have a certain body, certain parents, certain country, and certain things happen to you. And so in that way, we all follow a certain karma. But spiritual life means going beyond karma, means becoming free of karma, not free of good karma, free of bad karma, and finding this spiritual happiness. So I want to tell a story tonight of a great queen by the name of Kunti. And this is a perfect example of how the living entity, in pursuit of that which is real, that which is genuine spiritual life, and which will constitute full happiness. It's described that Krishna consciousness or bhakti yoga, which is the highest form of spiritual realization, it's described in the Bhagavad Gita, Raja Vidya, Raja Guyam, Pavitam Idamuttamam, Pratyaksa Bhagimam Dharmam, Shushukam Kartamavyayam. And the living entity who performs bhakti yoga, he comes across the Raja Vidya. This is means the king of education. I mean, there's so many spiritual practices, but this special personal knowledge, which constitutes the highest love, special personal knowledge of God, especially knowledge of Krishna, is Raja Vidya. It's the secret of all secrets. It's Raja Guyam. It is Raja Vidya is the king of all knowledge. Raja Guyam is the secret of all secrets. Pavitamita Muttamam, it's the purest knowledge. And what's beautiful, as Krishna says, it's pratyak. Pratyak means that it's actually self-explanatory. We hear so many people, I have faith in this, I have faith in that, I have faith in so-and-so person, I have faith in this or that. And faith is important in the beginning of Krishna consciousness or spiritual life. But faith is only a bridge by which one can have actual experience. If one has an experience of God, then at that phase in their life, there's no question of believing God anymore. And so it's at that experience of God that one has a transformation of heart. And that transformation of heart allows one to let go of so many things that are holding one back, because one is experiencing and seeing a higher, more beautiful reality. For instance, many people in this world, they take shelter of drugs, they take shelter of intoxication to feel happy. People become addicted to it. Even, there's severe addiction, there's mild addiction, but still so many people become addicted to so many things. Even people are addicted to their phones now. It's a huge problem. People are addicted to their phones. They can't stop. And it actually causes so much challenge in the brain. It destroys people's happiness. But if one ceases to be religious and decides, I'm going to actually live my life in such a way by following a process that I'm going to have an encounter with that divine person, then at that stage immediately one can overcome all these challenges. So this is why it says Pratyak Savagimam Dharmam. Krishna says this is the perfection of religion, because it gives direct perception of the self and God by realization. This is called Vijnana. It's no longer a matter of believing. And then he says Susukam Kartamavyayam, that it gives one the highest happiness, makes one Susukam. Sukam means happy, Susukam means very happy. Kartamavyayam, that happiness never ends. So we have to be bold enough to ask for that, to go for that, to make that the goal of our life. Don't make contentment the goal of life. Don't make the mode of goodness. Well, some people have the mode of goodness as the goal of life. Peaceful, clean, all these things, good. Mode of passion, the goal of life. Let me have lots of money. Let me have beautiful wife, big family, a lot of power. Mode of ignorance. Let me have just enough to get my beer and watch my football. So these are all people's goals, Most people are in the mode of passion. They want money and big family, big power. Anyways, all these things are material. But spiritually, the goal is God. My goal is I want to be with God. That's it. That's the goal of the saints. That's the goal of all the great saints, that I can be in hell and I'll be happy as long as I have this connection in my heart, as long as I have this pratyak, this self-evident consciousness of being with and speaking with and loving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Queen Kunti, there's so much to say about her. She's one of the greatest devotees of Krishna, one of the greatest devotees of God who ever lived. And she was very close to Krishna. I don't want to go, so deep into the story, but I'll just say a brief overview. The Queen Kunti, when she was a little girl, she got a boon from a sage. She got a blessing from a sage that she can call any demigod and have a child. So after she got this, she decided she would test it. So she called the sun god, and the sun god appeared and said, okay, ready to have a child. And she was like, well, I'm 12 years old. I don't think I'm ready for a child. And I'm not married, so this is going to be kind of embarrassing. And so he said, no worries. I won't violate you. I'll just give you a child. It'll come out of your ear. And so he just looked at her, and then this child came out of her ear, and his name was Karna, from the ear. And she didn't know what to do with this baby, so she put him on a floating piece of wood like Moses, and she sent him down the river. And he actually was found, he was raised, and he became a major character in the Mahabharata later on. Many of you know more than me. But then later on, she married one king named Pandu. Pandu was a great king, but due to some unfortunate circumstances, he was cursed that if he tried to have a baby, he would immediately die. And so he couldn't have a baby, but because Kunti had this boon, he was able to, have a baby with her without touching her. So she called 3 demigods Indra, and then from that, the boy Arjuna was born. Arjuna is, of course, famous for hearing the Bhagavad Gita. Bhima, he was born of the wind god, and Yudhisthira, who was born of Dharmaraj, or Yamaraj, the Lord of Dharma, the Lord of justice and righteousness. And so, at a certain point, her husband, King Pandu, he died due to his curse. And he ended up having one other wife who became pregnant, and he died. She became pregnant with 2 twins. And therefore, there were 5 boys without all the heirs to the kingdom. But the brother of Pandu, Dhritarashtra, the blind king, he was very ambitious, and so he wanted his sons to become the king. And so throughout their lives, these boys were harassed by this uncle of theirs and their cousins, and so many things happened to them. They were people, they tried to murder them so many times. They tried to burn them. They tried to poison them. They were banished to the forest, forced into a gambling match that caused so much catastrophe for their wife. It was so many bad things happened, and Kunti was along, and she was suffering the whole time. But one of the beautiful things about these individuals, Kunti and her 5 sons and their wife Draupadi, that they were great devotees of God. And so if we become a devotee of Krishna, one of the beautiful things is, just as if the Pandavas, there were so many challenges that were happening to them. They attempted to burn them in a house, but they escaped. They attempted to so many things. But Krishna was always there to save them. Krishna was always there to give them the piece of information they needed to avoid that suffering. So when you become a devotee of Krishna, it's the same way. We may find ourselves in so many struggles, but there's always an out. Krishna always gives us a special out. He always appears in the right nick of time to help us. And so Krishna is always watching you. It said, Suridam Sarvabhutanam, that God is the dearest friend of all living entities. He's always watching us. He's always looking out for us and always trying to bring us closer. And so we don't know how many dangers we've escaped because of that, watchful eye of Krishna. So at a certain point, after this story came to a climax, there was a great battle, the Kurukshetra battle. The Bhagavad Gita was spoken, and this great battle took place. And everything was over. So many people had died. And so Krishna was leaving. Krishna had been there with these people for a long time, wishing them well, helping them, advising them. He was the chariot driver of Arjuna. And so at a certain point, he decided, I'm going to go back to my city, Dwarka. And so as he was leaving, Kunti Maharani, was his apparently maternal aunt, or actually paternal aunt. But Krishna doesn't have a father or mother, but Krishna appears to. So Kunti said these beautiful prayers, and these beautiful prayers are very special for devotees. And these probably are some of the most famous prayers in the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. And they just show what a living entity who is genuinely seeking God may go through, and the happiness that that living entity may feel when they come into that union with the Lord. So Kunti actually, she prayed so many things. One thing she prayed was, she said that, "Oh my dear Lord, you are very easily approachable, but not by those who have high birth. Janmaishvarya Shruta Shribir, Edamana Madapuman, Naivart Hat Yabadatunvai, Twama Kinchana Gocharam." Says that Janma, that if your birth is very high, like you're born a king, you're born very high caste, whatever it is, you think you're born into riches, it makes it very hard to approach Krishna. Janmaishvarya, you have a lot of opulence, you're very rich, very, very wealthy. It's very hard to approach Krishna. Shruta, you're very learned. You think, I know so much, I know it all. What do I have to hear from this boy sitting here on me, dressed in orange bed sheets sitting on the cushion here? I know it all. And Shribir, Shri, beauty. People are very beautiful. I'm so beautiful. And therefore, people, they become so caught in their body that it's very hard for them to approach Krishna. But she says that Krishna, you're actually approached by those who are Twama Kinchana Gocharam, who are materially destitute. And so when we realize that we come in this world naked and we'll leave this world naked, we didn't come here with anything, and everything we've accomplished on the material level, no matter how much, we'll have to leave it and we'll have to start again in another birth unless we become spiritually enlightened. And so one who realizes this, that I have nothing in this world, I don't own anything here, everything is borrowed, even this body isn't mine, this body belongs to the earth belongs to God. And so one who realizes that, he can very easily approach God and he can pray sincerely. She says like that. She had such a hard life. But what she realized in this moment, after so many years of suffering, she realized that actually, because of this, I'm standing face to face with the Supreme Lord. And then she said one prayer that many people fear. She actually said, "My dear Krishna, I pray that these calamities come upon me again and again." She's actually praying for calamities. Who here has ever prayed for a calamity? I know one person who has. They're happening. You're getting your prayers even today. So now we pray for, who prays for calamities? But she said, "Let these calamities come upon me again and again, because by these calamities, I am seeing you again and again. I'm taking shelter of you again and again. And by seeing you, by being with you, I no longer will see repeated birth and death," meaning I won't reincarnate. I'll cease this cycle of reincarnation, which is the actual goal. And so this is the, beautiful message of Queen Kunti, that all the things that are happening, no matter what our material circumstances are, we have to be bold enough to go deeper and to surrender more and to get closer to God. We can think from far away, God just looks like a light. It's described that he is called Brahman. When you get closer, you start to see God reflecting in your own heart. But it's kind of like a reflection. You can't do anything with a reflection. It's very hard to interact with. But when you go closer, you realize this is actually a person. And when you get to know that person more, you realize this person has a form, has pastimes, has activities, just like I do. How could he created me, therefore I'm made in the image of God, so all these things that are in me are also present in the Supreme Lord. So the boldness is that we should come closer to Krishna. And so it's described, Maya dakshena prakriti suyute sacharachanam etananena konteya jagat vibhavartate. That this material world that we live in is completely under the control of God. Everything is working under his direction. So whatever happens to us, whatever challenge we face, it's actually Krishna coming to us in the form of a challenge so that we can meet him in that challenge if we make him the goal of our life. So you can't fix his plan. There's nothing you can do to change that plan. So we're all going along in this world, and this is the Kali Yuga. It's a very intense, rough age we're in, and we're facing so many calamities, so many challenges. But we have to have that courage to exit the freeway. We can exit the freeway. whatever lower level of karma we have, we make so many karmic contracts in this world. They can be and should be abandoned, because Krishna says, he says, Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam braja aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha shamima suchaha. Says that abandon all varieties of dharma, all varieties of religion, and surrender unto me. He says, mamekam means make me number one in your life. That when you make Krishna, when you make God the goal of your life, that changes everything down like a pyramid. If God is the goal, everything is changed from below. And that'll change our decision making, because I'm no longer making decisions based on my happiness. I'm no longer making decisions based on this passion, goodness, and ignorance. I'm making decisions based on what's going to get me closer to Krishna. And I say every day that this is the best day of my life. And it really is. I can say that with full confidence. This is the best day of my life. You're seeing me on the best day of my life, because no matter what challenges or curveballs the world may throw, I got closer to Krishna today. Because that was the goal. When I woke up this morning, that was my goal. And if you have that as your goal, nothing can stop you. No material thing can stop you from coming closer to God. So if that's our goal, we can sleep easy with peace in our heart that we accomplished this goal. So in this age, the most beautiful way to connect with God is this holy name, Hare Krishna. When you chant Hare Krishna, one connects very deeply with the Lord. It's the prescribed method in the Vedas, and the prescribed method Krishna gives to exit this material world and to cleanse the mind and to destroy all of the karmas, all of the past lives, and to stop reincarnating, because we don't want to do this anymore. Actually, we don't want to have to suffer birth, death, old age, and disease. We want to be attached to that which is real, that which is eternal. So thank you very much. I think we'll have questions. We have some time for questions and comments. It's a little bit of a hectic beginning. So any questions or comments? Questions are always good. If you ask questions, you make spiritual advancement. Yes, sir.
How long have you been involved with this concept? How long have you been involved in this group? How long have you been doing this?
Okay. Nice. Thank you very much. Depends on what you consider doing it. Am I doing it now? Maybe. I don't know if I'm there yet. I've been associated with the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita for about 11 years. And then I met the devotees in 2017. So I was reading the books, and then I met the devotees in 2017. And then I was like, a lot of purification I had to go through. And then I've been living at the temple as a monk since 2020. So thank you very much. Anything else? Thank you for asking. Okay, Hare Krishna. Oh wait, Suresh Prabhu has something to say.
When you were speaking, there was a ruckus going on.
I know.
So how were you processing that while you? Because it's kind of ironic that you were speaking about this is about transformation, this is about love. And then we had all the discord. The subtext going on.
Well, thank you for asking. Well, I'll answer in two ways. How I was processing was I was thinking, this is just one of those challenges that's, I really got to focus here and pray to my spiritual. I was thinking my spiritual master, actually, and I was thinking, this is my service. This is just a test. But in terms of, the actual philosophical point of that is, we have to always be aware that this material world is crazy, and you have to deal with situations accordingly. It's not that, the living entity, the devotee of God is simply going to let themselves get abused or run over, and that's something somehow constitutes spirituality. It doesn't. Why should that constitute spirituality? God doesn't want us to be abused, run over, stolen from, disrespected. Especially if it's us, it's one thing, but if it's others, and if it's the temple, that's a whole other thing. So Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita is just taking place on a battlefield. And so there is right and wrong in this world, and there are living entities who have the karma to act in such a way that they need to enforce law and order, to keep society peaceful, so that people like me can sit in the temple and give a talk and chant. And so people like you can hear nicely and peacefully. This is actual, practical spiritual life. And so that's a service. And sometimes people may sentimentally think one way or another, but fact is that when, when someone comes to rob you, you sure wish you had some protector, or you wish the cops were there, or some type of, you wish you had some person to protect you, or you can protect yourself, or you may have to. This is reality. And it's also spiritual, because this body is given to us by God. We defend the body, we defend the temple. The body is a temple. So, in that way. Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Thank you.